Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Therapy in the Great Outdoors, the business and practice of nature-based pediatric therapy. I'm Laura Park Figueroa. I'm the founder of the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community and the creator of the Contigo approach and the owner of Outdoor Kids OT, a nature-based pediatric practice. And today on the podcast, I have a very interesting conversation with Ashlyn Southard, who is a occupational therapy student. She did a really interesting job as a park ranger at Grand Teton National Park, working on increasing their accessibility throughout the park to all of their ranger programs. So you are going to hear from her in just a minute. It's a really amazing, you'll hear how enthused and amazed I am at everything she has done as a student. I cannot wait for her to enter the occupational therapy profession because she is just going to do such great things with this work. I just know it. You'll hear me kind of go on and on about how amazing she is in the podcast. Before we dive into our interview, though, I want to tell you that I am super excited. I shared this on Instagram. I'm sharing it here to let you all know that the process has started for me hiring a lawyer to help me set up the Therapy in the Great Outdoors Foundation. Actually, I don't know if it can be called a foundation yet. It might be like the Therapy in the Great Outdoors Fund or the Therapy in the Great Outdoors nonprofit, something like that. And for a long time, I have wanted to start a nonprofit to raise money to support children attending nature-based therapy services. The problem that I have seen in a lot of nature-based practices is that the therapist can't serve as wide a body of children that they want to serve because the reality is that many of our nature-based practices are cash pay businesses. And that naturally limits our ability to serve a wider, more diverse array of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, right? So I know that all of us give scholarships, all of us try as best we can, but the reality is when you run a business, you also have to be able to pay your employees. So I want to help kind of fund a solution to that problem. And I've been thinking a lot lately about what am I good at personally? And I would encourage you to do this as well. Like, what are you good at personally? And how can you use that to serve the nature-based therapy community? You know, the more I think about it, I love to write. I love to speak. I would love to fundraise. I know how to write grants. Like, I have some skills that could be of use in running a nonprofit and getting money to all of you, like to serve the kids that you serve, that you want to serve. So I put down a lot of money and I'm having the lawyer meeting today, and it's just really, really exciting. I really want to do this right. And so I have hired a law firm to help me. I'm very much a DIYer in most situations, but yeah, I'm just really excited about it. So that meeting is happening today and I'm getting started, and it may be about a year, I've been told, before everything is kind of fully finalized and I'm allowed to, you know, and I get the 501c3 status and I'm allowed to raise money. But my goal is to have the process be relatively simple for applying for scholarships. I don't want there to be a lot of red tape around the whole process. I want it to be simple for practices and families to access any funds that we would have available in the nonprofit. So I'll be putting my business systems brain to use in developing those systems to keep them as simple as possible for both practices and families too. So, it's the thing I've wanted to do for so many years, y'all. And I have a long list of things that are on this, like, it's not a real list, it's in my brain list of quote unquote, after the PhD, I will do that. And it just feels really good to be getting started on it because it is something that has come up in my mind so many times in the work that I've done over the last many years. So, okay, that's it. I'm going to dive right into our episode with Ashlyn. Welcome, Ashlyn. Thank you for being here. I cannot wait to hear your story.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for having me on. I'm super excited. I think I've
Yes.
been following this community since I was like maybe a sophomore or junior in my undergrad. So it's kind of fun to look back and be like, it was back when it was Facebook. So
Yep.
I've
Yep.
loved to see how it's grown. So I'm just really
Yeah.
happy to
Well,
be here.
thank you for being there. It's so cool to see students interested in this work, right? Like it's really, I think it only has potential. Like the whole nature-based therapy movement is just going to keep growing. I think the more and more technology kind of gets into our lives, right? We need nature so badly. And it's so cool to me. Like, okay, so you're at St. Louis University. We didn't say that. You're in St. Louis, where I grew up. So I was like loving to see that when you told me that. And you're graduating in May, yes?
Yeah.
Like in a
Yes.
month. That's so exciting. That's
I
so
can't
exciting.
believe it. It doesn't seem real.
It's
So,
so great. I think your story is going to be really interesting to people to see how, even as a student, you can take action to kind of do things outdoors and start gearing your work in that direction. So it's really cool. So why don't you tell us about you shared a story with me and I said I don't want to share that story. I want you to share your story. That is such a it's such a meaningful thing. So you talked about a family vacation in 2019 and tell us
yes.
how you kind of came to this work. Like what was your light bulb moment about like what's going on here? I want to hear that story.
Yeah, so essentially, I think it's kind of important to set the scene. So I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and I have 5 younger siblings with some sort of intellectual developmental disability. So we have a mix of autism and Fragile X syndrome, just to kind of
Okay.
preface like the sort of things that my siblings are kind of dealing with. There's a lot of sensory integration, a lot of like some different behaviors that can come on because of something making them upset in the environment, some language differences. So
Mhm.
that's sort of like the preface, like this is what we're going into all of our vacations experiencing. But my family loves to travel. We actually are gonna this summer hit all 48 states in like the continental United States. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, we're really excited. And then we have Hawaii and Alaska up next, but we're that's a later plan.
Yeah, those are good places to go for like an extended period. Let's go to
Oh
Hawaii
yes.
for 2 weeks, right?
Yes, exactly.
Not just a drive
So
through like the 48
yeah.
states.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've done a lot of, like of this national park stuff. That's usually where most of our vacations sort of that's kinda like what we plan around and then go from there. And it was in the 2019 vacation, I was somewhat into my OT school, so I was kinda past, like, those gen eds, starting to learn more about,
Mhm.
like, some of the different models, like the doing, being, becoming, the, like, PEO, like, stuff like that where or, like, anything in occupational science because like, St. Louis University is really based in occupational sciences.
Okay.
That's what my bachelor's is in. I was sort of in that part of my education, and I just when we were going through the national parks, I started noticing, like, how different things, like, could be applied from an OT lens, but more specifically, we were driving in Yellowstone, and I just remember thinking, like, "Could I be a park ranger and just, like, bring, like, different services to the parks, to the people?" Because
Yeah.
we had to basically modify every single thing that we brought in. So, let me back up, I guess. My family, every single vacation makes, like, a big binder, and it lists every single stop we're going. It lists, like, how long it's gonna take to get to the next stop. It has
Mhm.
a picture of the site, and then my dad writes, like, a little blurb, like, because we do a lot of like historical places too, because
Okay.
you know, so he lists a little bit about like this is what this site's about, and like this is what we're gonna learn. All this stuff is based on like this stuff that my family's learned just growing up with having kids with disabilities and like
Right.
the things that they need. So it was all really intentional to help them feel prepared. I know my brother, he like asks he gets his own binder because he needs the binder to stay regulated and calm.
Yeah.
So that's how like he flips through it and we make like several versions. We have the one that my dad uses when he's driving so he can keep track of everything. We have the one for my brother in the back.
Right.
And then we have also our daily schedule where it's like that laminated sheet of paper and it's like on the right side it's all the places we're gonna go or on the left
Mhm.
side it's all the places we're gonna go and then we have like the going to and then the we've been there or like we've done so the
Yep.
classic like moving over. So just looking at all these tools and looking at how much work it was to just prepare and get all that stuff done before even getting to the parks, I just thought that that would be like the perfect job for somebody who like really
Yeah.
knows this park. Because sure, you can look up everything in you can look on the Grand Teton or Yellowstone website, but and like learn a lot. But if you don't have an intimate knowledge of like the resources, it's just not going to be as valuable.
Right. So how did you end up working in the parks then? So you saw this, it was this family vacation where you were like, we're modifying all of this stuff for our family. What if I could work in the parks? And then what happened?
So, basically, it was kind of like it was not the traditional route. I was just sent a bunch of emails to the National Park Service. Pretty sure it was during, like, the COVID era when everyone was at home, and I was like, "What do I have to lose?" Like, at this point, I'm at home, I have nothing else to do.
Right.
I wanna be outside. Like, I might as well let's just see if I, like, send a bunch of emails. So, wrote out, like, an email to a bunch of different national parks and just sent it through, like, their contact us page, and I've actually got, like, some responses from several. Some of them were like, "Here's our internship pages, like, look at this." So I was basically saying, "Hey," because I had one summer that I could go pretty much because I had classes during another summer. So I was like,
Right.
"During this summer, like, from this to this, I wanna come to your park and make it more accessible. Like, here are all the reasons why." I basically said that story, like, I've seen how my family has struggled without the resources. I've seen how we've made improvements using certain resources and basically like almost made like a little pitch to them about
Yeah.
like why they should get an OT student in the park. And Yellowstone and Grand Teton were both very interested. Grand Teton was the one that ended up working out, but I like just got connected through them and it was almost like a 2-year process to actually make it happen. So
Yeah.
I started that in 2020 and then found out I guess it was more like a year and a half. Anyways, but start found out like the summer before I went that I was going. So it was kind of
Okay.
like a really long process of like, am I going? Am I not going? But it was just a cold email. So
I mean, kudos to you for like your stick to itiveness with this. I mean, it's really cool to see how you went for it, you reached out, like you are a future entrepreneur girl, I have to say. I'm like, I am
well, thank
100%
you.
confident you will be running your own business someday. No. So I'm wondering, the question I had in my mind was, were you volunteering or is this a paid position like as a park ranger?
I was paid. So I was paid through the Grand Teton Association. Basically,
Okay.
when you go to the bookstore at any national park, they each
Yep.
have their own association. So shout out to the Grand Teton Association because they completely made this happen. And my supervisor was also really helpful in just like rearranging basically the entire like her entire workforce like of rangers figuring out like okay we can move this person around here and this person around here so that we can have you. It was really cool because they made a lot of efforts to make it happen. Like they had to hire another person to come after me because I couldn't stay the whole season. And then they
Right.
also had to hire another part-time person. Like when I say the stars aligned, like they aligned and they made it happen. And I just really think it was like meant to be. And it's been cool to see they loved all the accessibility stuff. Just in terms of like, you know, the more I focused a lot on the like cognitive and like
Mhm.
sensory but I also got to learn about the, like, physical mobility stuff that they were doing in terms of accessibility. They're
Yeah.
making strides in that, and then since that internship, Death Valley National Park has also reached out to me about they have an accessibility intern now who is not related to the OT world, but I was able to connect with her actually really recently, and I'm chatting back and forth with her to kind of help guide her in some different things. So, it's really cool to see how they're growing.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to go all business mode on you right now because the work is so meaningful, but also my brain just goes to like, this is a consulting business. I mean, you already essentially have the experience you need to start consulting with other national parks. Like, it is incredible. Like, as a student to have this already done, it is truly incredible. I want you to, I hope you know this. I hope you know that
It's
this is
honestly a
not,
goal of mine.
is it a goal of yours to start a
It
consulting
is.
business? Oh, I
Um,
love this.
I just love to have a nature-based clinic. I think that's been sort of on my mind ever since, like, I found the nature-based OT world because I was like,
Mhm.
I've lived in nature my whole life, and I just I think I just love it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole consulting with national parks could be a business in and of itself, I think. But you could have a clinic and you could do what I do, run like multiple businesses, you know. I don't recommend it to start out, honestly. Like, sometimes I'm like, wait, oh, I'm starting another one. Okay. I love it though. I totally love it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things you did, right, in the parks, because when you sent me that list, I was like, holy moly. And you were only there for less than 3 months for a summer?
Yeah. So because I took gross anatomy, or no, that was the summer before. So that's why I
Right.
couldn't stay for like a whole big summer. But I actually left the day I graduated and drove halfway to Grand Teton. And then I had to leave early because my classes just started in early August. But yeah,
Okay.
it was a short time. And honestly, when I wrote out that list, I surprised myself. I was like, it was kind of a
Yeah.
nice reflective activity. So
Yes.
I didn't really even realize how much I did until I really sat down and did it. But yeah.
So tell us about what you did. Tell them some of the things that were on that list. Do you have it in front of you? I can pull it
Yes, I
up too
actually
if you want me to.
no, I actually do have it in front of me. So when I started off kind of simple and I went through and made visual like schedules for everything. So or rather I prepared something so that parents could use it, print it off the website, email them to get access to it so that parents could make visual schedules. Because to me, like, what I didn't want parents to have to do is okay, so we know most people come into the park not even knowing what hike they want, is something I kind of learned. Because I also did the internship stuff, but I also was a interpretive ranger. So I led ranger programs and stuff and worked at the visitor center.
Okay.
Um, But so I started off by like making visual schedules. So I went through and took like every animal that you could think of, all of the plants, all the like, picturesque sites that parents like wanted to go to, and
Yeah.
made a card for that and put it all together so that it would be something that people could print, cut out, like copy and paste, like, okay, today we're going to Jenny Lake and we're gonna see bears. So I even had an example one that parents could just print off, like it's an animal search. So it was like
Yeah.
5 of the common animals, and it was like, okay, these are the ones we're looking for. So I started pretty basic, and I made a communication board that like rangers could use, and then I also made social stories. So that was kind of where I think this is what could be most helpful to families because when you're going on a hike, how do you prepare a kid for a hike that like you don't know anything about? Um,
Right.
So I made social stories about all the popular hikes, about all the ones like the families would probably go on.
Mhm.
So I went through and was like, this is our checklist for what we need. It was like hiking boots, a backpack, water. It talked
Yep.
about safety things. It talked about what you might see. So a lot of them have water features and like could be really loud. So I tried to like prepare parents and like the children for okay, this might be an overstimulating part of the hike, but if we just keep going, we're gonna get to the lake and we can like take a break. So I
Yeah.
had a lot. It was interactive. So it was walking them through the hike, but also helping them interact with the environment and the resources in the park because
Okay.
that was my goal was I wanted to be able to make some like I wanted people to be able to like complete their sensory regulation stuff that they did every day like in the clinic, every day at
Mhm.
home, every day at school. But I wanted it to be done in the park but in a really intentional way because it's a vacation like you don't want to feel like you're at school.
Right.
So that was another one. I did a bear social story because bear safety is huge in Grand Teton
Yeah.
and like personally when I'm with my family I have a healthy fear of bears. Like I'm not actually afraid of them, but I know what I need to do and I know how to prevent anything from happening. So I walked them through like the different types of bears. So it's not just like it was like trying to teach them this is how you can be safe, but also learning about the animal because at the end of the day, like that's why you're going on vacation. So I did those are sort of the three like where I started. I made a sensory walk. So it was a ranger led program and again, it talks about some different animals and resources and how they experience the park through their senses. And then part of the walk and part of the program was using your own senses to interact and learn about the animal. So one of them was a fox, and it was like talking about how fox can like hear a mouse squeak from like 100 feet away. So
Mhm.
talking about those things and like walking around on a very easy accessible trail while also like practicing like what can you hear right now and then also having like a fox pelt out so that the kids can touch so trying to like
Yeah.
engage their senses in multiple ways if you ever want to stop me feel free but I'll kind of keep going through the list. I made a lot of resources for, again, like sensory regulation. So ideas for families, like a lot of them were heavy work ideas. So how can you
Hmm.
get your kid to complete things like heavy work to help them stay calm while they're going on a hike or traveling in the car? So a lot of that was like the different animal walks. So which was kind
Uh-huh.
of fun. And I have like pictures of me like flapping my hand, like flapping my arms like an eagle, or
Uh-huh.
doing a bear crawl. And I had like one of my coworkers like take a picture, and she was so confused, and I had to explain it all to her.
Great.
Um, but I have like cards like that that families can print out, breathing techniques as well. So all of this, every single one of them connected back to like nature and just trying to fully immerse yourself in being like using nature as sort of the mechanism of like calming down and staying
Yeah.
regulated. Yeah. We also talked a lot about sensory kits. So that was kind of one that I wish could have like happened right when I was there, but obviously with ordering supplies and stuff that wasn't able to happen. But I listed out a bunch of different ideas for a sensory kit, and like the science behind like this is not just like a funny toy, like this helps with this,
Right.
and like why it's useful and beneficial to a child. But they're actually getting a few different sensory kits at the visitor centers this year. So I'm really excited to see. I'm going to ask her to send me a picture when they get them in. But
Yeah.
so I prepared information for that. And then I also created training for park rangers. So that was fun. I like recorded a video. I don't think they're going to show the video, but I think that's the video that's training the ranger that's going to lead the training.
Okay.
Because in my head, when I was like going on these vacations with my family, I thought I keep finding like the three barriers that I think the Park Service and outdoor spaces in general have. So to me, and these are just three, I'm sure there's many more. A lack of staff knowledge on disabilities and how to
Yeah.
interact with people with disabilities, and visitor knowledge as well. But obviously, we can really only affect the staff. Environmental barriers in terms of like the sense, sometimes like sensory overload is happening, or you're not able to even get like a wheelchair or a stroller that is acting as a mobility device into a building or into a bathroom.
Right.
And then just the lack of supports, which was really what I was trying to do. I was mainly focusing on the lack of staff knowledge and the lack of supports like for visitors during my internship. So it was cool to be able to do the training, because I'd love to say that every single park ranger my family's come across has been super understanding, and most have, but there have been definitely a few different instances where it's like, well, we are going to do some education right now.
Mhm.
So it's cool that the frontline people this year are going to be trained in all sorts of things. So all sorts of sensory techniques, all sorts of different types of disabilities, and how you can best help people. And I feel like let me see, I feel like the last big thing I did was the Junior Ranger book. And so I learned a lot about the Junior Ranger process, and they keep the same one for several years, and each park does it super different. But I went through our Junior Ranger book and gave a ton of feedback on, hey, this looks really good. And then also gave ideas for like editing. So, one example of one of the edits I gave them was they kind of categorized their Junior Ranger book by age. So, I suggested to them, like, maybe make it difficulty level instead of doing like these 3 pages are for, 4 to 5, 4 to 5.
3-year-olds. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, that might be somebody else's like baseline level of like what they're able to kind of
Mhm.
interact at. And like adults, I know plenty of adults that came through and wanted to be junior rangers. So that was sort of one of the things. But they're going through, and I was in the interpretive team, that was more the educational team.
Mhm.
And those are the edits that I sent off to them. So I'm excited to see what they do. If I would have had more time, I think I would have tried to work with them a little bit more to make a whole like modified one. I know Yosemite has a modified Junior Ranger
Okay.
handout, which is really great. I was looking at it for a parent who like wants to print it off and is taking care of like two other kids. I think it's a little bit hard to follow, because the beauty of the Junior Ranger book is you hand it to your kid
Yeah.
and you guys are looking at it and your kid can follow along by
Right.
themselves. So that my idea of like a perfect Junior Ranger book is just being able to hand it to your kid and be like, let's look at this. And they can kind of lead the education, lead the learning. But yeah, those are some of the different things that
Yeah, just
I
a
was
few
able to do.
things. Not nothing much. Like, oh my goodness, I'm just in total amazement. So my question that comes up in my brain when you share all these things that you did in such a short span of time, right? Well, there's a few questions. I always have questions, but the person who took over for you, was their role to take over as like the lead accessibility person on the team, or were they just like a ranger who's taking over for your ranger role? Like how much carryover has there been? I guess that's my question is I am hoping that the things you did are still being used and are like available now and are being put into practice. Do you know if they are, or if someone's kind of carrying the torch there for you after you leave?
So the person that came in after me was somebody to fill the ranger role. And they don't have, to my knowledge, at least, like an accessibility person, which not a lot of national parks do, which I think is something that's kind of becoming more of a thing now. Like slowly I hear about this national park has this person. I haven't heard of like a full-time person like year round doing any accessibility work in the national park, like park level. There's somebody in the federal level who does
I was
that.
going to say, yeah, nationally. Yep.
But in terms of like park specific, I don't know if there's somebody that's like full-time year round that does that at like certain parks. Not to my knowledge at Grand Teton, but how do I phrase this? I would say my supervisor, or my old supervisor rather, has followed through with a lot of the different stuff. Like she's the one
Mhm.
who's going to lead the training. She's the one who's kind of putting together the sensory kits. So I feel like that's sort of fallen on her just because she used to supervise me. They have access to like all the different sensory things. And I just think their website needs to be updated.
Yeah.
The problem with getting things on the website is just making sure they're very particular in the park service about like how you
Mhm.
have things like the media wise, but making sure it's all 501c3 and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. So that's kind of like what slowed me down. So that's like maybe if the internship would have been like that month longer, those
Right.
sort of things would have been like completed. But I'm hoping that they get it on the website. But if you were to like call up to, Grand Teton National Parks, contact us, like they have a call line or an
Yeah.
email, they would be able to send people the information. I think it's a matter of maybe if they listed on the website to call this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, I'm even wondering too, like, just, I mean, again, being like, come on, Ashlyn, do the business. No, because I'm just thinking about, do you own the rights to what you created there, or does the national park own it? They own it.
the national
Okay.
park owns it.
Okay. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't create your own business around providing these resources for
Right.
families on a website somewhere and have that be part of your offering to the world, right? Like if you're
Right.
there's nothing to stop you from saying, "Okay, I know the landmarks in Yosemite and I'm going to make a social story about going on the hike to Mirror Lake and seeing Half Dome."
Hmm.
Like it's such a valuable thing to offer to families. I mean, really, I'm
Hmm.
like your website could become known as like the place to go to get the resources, right? So,
Right.
and again, long way away, I'm sure, and lots of marketing and like needing to get the brand awareness out there, but I do feel like there is what you're sharing here is like this problem with the red tape in a large agency, right? And it's almost like on your own you could get the resources and I think you could charge for them. You could it's like it's okay to charge money for something that's very valuable to families, right? So I think that I worry so much in like a big organization like that, that the work that you did, I want that to be like out there to people, like people need to know that these resources are available because the things that you
Yeah.
did are really so unique in thinking like using an OT frame. And I should have said early in this podcast, like this podcast is not just for OTs. I know a lot of people come on and we talk a lot about OT, and I'm really trying to like expand this like nature-based love to all the other allied health professions and mental health counselors and stuff. Mental health counselors have a lot of ecotherapy stuff already, but like PTOT and speech, like there's not really much. I do think OTs are really leading in the space. There's more of us kind of entering nature-based practice, but I think what you did is so specifically with an OT lens, like to just look at all of those different areas, right? And how you can modify to support kids. What do you think, like, getting to see again, I this is what I meant, like the whole conversation. I'm like, now we should talk about the vacation thing. So you shared what your family does. Like, what do you think are things that any therapist could do to support families who have children with special needs that are going on vacations? Like, you've already shared some of the things you did, so maybe there's ideas there. But are there thoughts top of mind that you would have? Like, I think this is something we often don't think about. Like, if we're seeing a kid for therapy and they're going on vacation, we're like, bye, see ya, have a fun vacation. We just don't think about actually giving any support in that area. So it's something I think will be interesting to talk about here.
Yeah. So I think what could be really valuable is, especially in any sort of like nature-based like practice, you're seeing the kid every day, like, or not every day, but
Yeah.
like you're seeing the child like interact with nature. And you're noticing, all right, little Johnny did not enjoy that, but he's
Mhm.
really thriving over here. Letting, and I know you let the parents know in like some capacity, but like sitting down and like being like, he does really great like near the water, and throwing rocks into the water is like super like meditated to him. That's like
Mhm.
going to provide that proprioceptive input that's going to help calm him down. Like, if you guys are having a hard time on vacation, go find this little place, go find a place where he can be near water and just
Yeah.
splash around for a little bit, and then kind of change paces. I think like observing and looking around and seeing like how can like seeing what like they're successful at, I guess, and being like, how can that carry over to vacation? I
Mhm.
think is one way to do that.
Yeah, and I think the visual schedules too, like you said, I mean, I do think families they use those when they're on vacation, right? So
Mhm.
like maybe helping them prep for like
Right.
whatever's coming up wherever they're going, right? Whatever might be there.
But from like a speech standpoint too, and obviously, I like my knowledge in speech is not nearly as much as
Right.
it is in
We're
like
not
the
speech
OT world.
therapists.
Yes, but like preparing like the any sort of like AAC device and getting like, okay, so what are the animals that you're likely going to see, so that when you go talk to a ranger, like, to me, it's like you want your kid to go and like interact with rangers and like put the words that they might need on there, because that's probably not something that's like in their like top 10 words, but
Right.
like putting on like moose, putting on bear, because I'm telling you, those definitely aren't words that are in any of my siblings' AAC devices. But if that was
Right.
something that they could bring up and like talk to the ranger about, then like how cool could that interaction be to like that child to be able to talk to a ranger? I don't know. I feel like something I like noticed a lot with kids was they really loved like talking to rangers because they look like they're in charge and they look really cool and official. Sometimes they're nervous, but like if you let the child have that language, it might make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's great. Like prepping them for that conversation, helping
Hmm.
them know what to say. Cause I know when my daughter was young, she's my oldest, so she's 20 now, but from a very, very young age, she was always very hesitant to speak to an adult or to go even something as simple as like at a restaurant, just going, "Oh, just go ask if you don't have a fork. Okay, go ask the server over there," or whatever. She just would not want to, just anxiety over like asking a question or something, just kind of shy, right? And I think like giving her the language, right? Might have helped her, like we did in a lot of situations, say, "Okay, you're gonna practice saying this, now go over and say it." So, yeah, that just prepping for the interaction to occur, I think is key to, like, having them have those successful kind of interactions. I love what you said about the Rangers look official. They do
Yeah.
in their little outfits
I
with their
know.
walkie-talkies and
Yes, I know. And I feel like people get intimidated, but yeah.
a little bit.
Um, I think another thing too is I know lots of kids like don't necessarily deal with mobility issues, but if you do have a client or know, is someone reaching out to you as a nature-based practitioner and they do have mobility issues, like helping them connect with like this like sort of chair or this sort of like adaptive device might be helpful in terms of like being able to actually navigate and get on the trails. Grand
Yeah.
Teton's lucky because there's an organization in Jackson, Wyoming called Teton Adaptive, and if you let them know ahead of time, they'll lease out like all-terrain wheelchairs, and they're like,
Oh, so cool.
they're really cool for free. And it's like, if you just, I don't know, if you know like what you might need, I don't think people even know that's out there. So I
Yeah.
think it could be simple as like education on, hey, this is something that I've seen before, that I've seen been helpful, that has been helpful for others. You
Hmm.
might want to look into it. Just, I think
Yeah.
parents don't even know what's out there because they're planning a vacation, especially if they have a child with a disability. I
Yeah.
just feel like there's so much that goes into a vacation in general that these
Oh,
are
yeah.
things that they're probably not thinking about, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's tiring just to plan the vacation, you know, before
Yeah.
you even go. Like, so yeah, it's definitely, I think doing some of that legwork for families where you can look into what might be available and share resources with them is a huge way to serve people that you're working with. I mean, just sharing that. I mean, imagine if you found out about Teton Adaptive and you shared this with families, it could change the entire experience they have in a national park. That's so cool. Love it. Well, what else? What else should we talk about? I feel like we've hit like so many different things here, and you've probably given people so many ideas of like what is possible in nature based. That's what I love about this conversation is it's not the traditional kind of way that we think about doing nature-based practice, quote
Right.
unquote, right? So we think about it like I have a client, I work outdoors, I work in a garden, something like that, or I
Yeah.
bring nature into the indoor setting in my school-based job, whatever it is, right? But you really took your lens as an OT and like applied it in a completely unique way within the national parks. I just think it's incredible. So tell people where they can connect with you. Like I saw you're on LinkedIn. Are you anywhere else online? Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to like follow this incredible business that you're going to start in the
Yeah.
future?
I'd say right now through LinkedIn or through my email is probably
Okay.
the best way to connect with me. I do have an Instagram, but it's not very much like, it's
Yeah.
not really super nature based right now, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest. One
So
other idea for, in terms of like doing this sort of practice, back to like the last question, I just thought of one more thing that I think could be helpful. I know a lot of people are doing groups. If you do groups and include the siblings, that can be a really unique
mm,
way to kind of continue the follow over of like having success in nature in the clinic versus having success in nature like on vacation. That's
yeah.
another thing I'm like very passionate about is like sibling support and like including siblings in different things because I remember so vividly when I was like 4 years old being excluded from my brother's OT sessions. And like that had such an impact on me. But
Mm,
I think doing it in the outside world, like doing it in the nature base, could be super unique because that child, that sibling is going to be prepared to help their sibling with the
yeah.
disability so much more if they are seeing how they're interacting in nature. I just think that could be an interesting group like led session.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think we need to be thinking more that way as therapists about how can we bring the family in, right? Like rather than I mean, that's the whole reason when I developed the Contigo approach years ago, it was like, why do we have an OT with a kid by themselves in a session anyway?
Hmm.
Why is that ever a thing? Ever? Like,
Right.
okay, maybe once in a while. I'm very black and white in my thinking. People are always like, well, sometimes it is, Laura. I'm like, okay, yes, you're right. Okay, sometimes. But like really reality is like we exist in this like web of human relationships, right? And like that connection
Mhm.
piece, like if you as the therapist are seeing them once a week, like does that do as much good as if the parent or a caregiver or an ABA therapist or their sibling or someone else in their life, even a friend of theirs, is in the session
Mhm.
with them? It to me that just makes more sense from a developmental kind of evolutionary human perspective that like we need to be in relationship with other people to be healthy and whole human beings. So that's like the whole foundation of like why
Totally
I
agree.
developed the approach I have. So I'm like, I just believe in it so much. So I'm so glad that you like had that little like, let me say one more thing at the end
Yes.
because
Didn't
I
wanna
I, I
interrupt you, but
agree
I
with
was
that
like, "Yeah."
so much. It's so important. Okay, so on LinkedIn, let's spell your name for everybody. So it's Ashlyn Ashlyn, and it's Southard Southard. S as in Sam for the first name. So if you want to look her up on LinkedIn and connect there, why don't you, if you want to share your email, why don't you share it here? I'm not going to put it in the show notes because you will probably get spammed if like there's web
Yes.
bots that like, crawl over websites trying to find emails to spam people.
Yeah.
So why don't you
Smart.
say it here? If you say it
Okay.
here, it won't be then people can reach out to you.
Perfect. So again, it's just my last name, SOUTHARDAC @gmail.com.
Okay, great. Yay. Thank you so much for making time for this. I'm just, especially with like, you're almost done with school. I can't imagine how busy you must be now. So I'm so grateful to you for making time and like sharing all of this amazing work you did with our community. And just, I literally cannot wait to see what you do. I'm so excited for you, like to start your career. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I mean, your community has definitely it's just been so helpful in like my development as almost a new grad. So I don't think without like this whole group of therapists who are supporting each other and
mm,
just bouncing ideas off each other, like obviously I'm not doing like treatments on my own, like in a clinic right now, but it's so helpful to see the conversations and to see the research coming out. So
yeah,
thank you for everything that you've built around
there's
nature-based
it is
therapy.
so cool to see the variety of stuff that people are doing. So this is a little shout out for the TGO community. If you're listening to this and you're not inside the Therapy in the Great Outdoors community, you need to go over there and join. The easiest way to get there is therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. I say it on the exit to this podcast too. So you're going to hear another little spiel right after this, but I really do. It's free. The discussion forum and the member directory. So you can find people near you. And there's something else that's free. I can't remember. There's another space in there that's free, but there's so much there where you can really like get a lot of information for free about nature-based work and what everybody else is doing in the world too. So yeah, it's a good place to be. Good place to hang out. Thank you, Ashlyn.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us today for Therapy in the Great Outdoors. If you can't get enough, if you just want even more information about nature-based pediatric practice, head on over to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. At that website, you can join our free community, Therapy in the Great Outdoors, that has loads of resources for you to support your nature-based work with children, as well as a free ebook that I wrote called The Nature-Based Practice Roadmap. It is a guide to help you focus and avoid costly mistakes, which I might have made myself, as you start or grow your nature-based pediatric practice. On the website, you can also join the waitlist for the Contigo Approach online course. Contigo stands for Connection and Transformation in the Great Outdoors. This course will teach you everything you need to know to become an expert in nature-based pediatric therapy. To my knowledge, it is the only evidence-based, operationalized framework for pediatric nature-based therapy. And what that means is that when you take the Contigo Approach course, you will have a shared mental model for yourself, your clients, and your team. And this is how you grow a business, by having a framework that you use in your business that helps kind of anchor everyone to what is going on here and what are we doing. You'll learn about the research-based and theoretical foundations of nature-based practice and loads of practical how-tos about nature-based practice. How can you do nature-based practice in alignment with the evidence in order to get the best results for your clients? So a lot of times when people start out in nature-based work, I think they're DIYing it, which is fine. We learn a lot by DIYing things. However, you're not often sure if you're doing things correctly. And that means you could be making mistakes that could be costing you valuable time with families and children and getting them the outcomes that they really want from your session. DIYing also costs you personally valuable time and money as you are getting started in nature-based work. And this course can save you all of that time and money. This course also includes lifetime access, including any updates we make, and ongoing mentoring for years to come on our mentoring calls that we offer with the online course. So truly gives you everything you need to become an expert. I promise that. And it's the only course that will guarantee that for you. So head on over to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com. You can also go to contigoapproach.com, but I have tried to make everything available at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com to make it easy to find all of the resources there in one place for you. That's it for today. Get outdoors, connect, reflect, and enjoy the business and practice of therapy in the great outdoors.